I'm Elaine, I'm 30 years old, and I run my own company. Now, most people would never guess this, but I grew up being called trash by my own family. When clients notice the burn scar on my forearm and ask what happened, I usually make up a story about a cooking accident. The truth is much darker. It was my sister, Heather, who deliberately pressed a hot iron against my skin while my parents watched and laughed. That day changed everything for me, setting me on a path that would eventually lead to my freedom and their downfall. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever had to rise above family betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, this journey holds lessons for anyone who has ever felt like an outsider in their own home. Growing up in our suburban Michigan home, I always felt more like an unwelcome guest than a beloved daughter. From the outside, our house looked perfectly normal. It had two-story blue siding and a neatly trimmed lawn that my father, Greg, obsessively maintained when he was sober. But inside those walls, a completely different reality existed. From my earliest memories, the family dynamic was always clear. My sister Heather, 3 years older than me, was the golden child. With her manipulative tears and calculated affection, she had our mother, Diana, wrapped around her finger. Our father, when he was present between drinking binges, showed occasional interest in Heather while my existence was barely acknowledged. I was 5 years old when I first realized something was wrong with how I was treated. It was Christmas morning, and Santa had brought Heather a beautiful new bike with streamers on the handlebars and a basket in front. My gift was a used coloring book, half the pages already filled in. When I asked why Santa brought me a used gift, my mother laughed coldly. "Because trash doesn't deserve new things," she said, while my father nodded in agreement. For hours, I spent time trying to understand what I had done to be labeled trash. Did I not wash my hands enough? Did I forget to clean my room? The torment is a special kind for a child trying to make sense of irrational hatred. By second grade, I had developed a survival strategy. I would be perfect in every way possible. My room was kept immaculate. My grades were flawless. I volunteered to do extra chores without being asked. Surely, if I proved my worth, they would stop seeing me as trash. My efforts only seemed to make everything worse. Each perfect test score I brought home was met with accusations of cheating. Each clean room was inspected and declared, "Still filthy, just like you." When I was 8, I cleaned the entire kitchen as a surprise while everyone was out. My mother came home, looked around, and then deliberately knocked a carton of milk onto the floor I had just mopped. "Clean it again, trash," she said, walking away as milk soaked into my socks. The only light in my childhood was my grandmother, Eleanor, my mother's mother. Strangely enough, she lived an hour away, and my visits to her house were rare oases of normalcy. Grandma Eleanor never criticized me. She listened to my stories, baked cookies with me, and told me I was smart and kind. She had these old photos of my mother as a child, smiling and looking happy. I couldn't reconcile those images with the bitter woman who raised me. "Your mother had a difficult childhood in her own way," Grandma Eleanor told me once. "But that doesn't excuse how she treats you. Remember, Elaine, how people treat you says more about them than it does about you." Those words became a lifeline for me, something I would repeat to myself on the very worst days. But when I was 13, Grandma Eleanor died unexpectedly from a heart attack. At the funeral, I cried while my mother remained dry-eyed and impatient. "Stop the theatrics," she hissed as I sobbed beside the casket. "You barely knew her." In reality, I had probably spent more time talking with my grandmother than my mother ever had. The loss of my only ally left me truly alone in a house full of people who seemed to actively dislike me. As I entered middle school, my academic achievements became impossible to dismiss. Teachers called home with praise. The principal mentioned my name at assemblies. Our father, Greg, when sober enough to participate in family life, followed our mother's lead. His alcoholism had worsened over the years, and with it, his verbal cruelty. His favorite pastime became listing all the ways I was a disappointment, always done within earshot but rarely to my face. "That girl is nothing but a burden," he would tell my mother loudly from the living room while I did homework in the kitchen. "We feed her, clothe her, and what thanks do we get? Nothing but attitude and thinking she's better than us." The irony was that I desperately wanted their approval. Despite years of mistreatment, some childish part of me still craved their love. Each rejection reinforced what they had told me since childhood. I was trash, unworthy of basic kindness, let alone love. As my junior year progressed, Heather's invasion of my privacy escalated. She read my diary, searched through my backpack, and monitored my phone when I left it unattended. One day, I returned from work to find my room completely ransacked. Drawers emptied, mattress askew, books scattered across the floor. Heather stood in the middle of the chaos, holding a university brochure I had hidden between my mattress and box spring. "Planning your big escape, Einstein?" she sneered, waving the glossy pamphlet. "Think you're too good for this family?" I lunged for the brochure, but she danced away laughing. "Mom! Dad! Come see what your perfect daughter is hiding." Our parents appeared in the doorway, my father leaning against the frame for support, already drunk though it was only 7 in the evening. "What now?" my mother sighed, as though I had created this situation. "Look at this." Heather thrust the brochure at them. "She's applying to fancy schools behind our backs." My mother snatched the material, flipping through it with a deepening frown. "Columbia University? New York City? Who do you think is going to pay for this nonsense?" "I can get scholarships," I said quietly. "I've been researching options." My father let out a bitter laugh. "Scholarships? You really think you're special enough for that?" "I have a 4.0 GPA, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "And my SAT scores are in the top percentile." "Listen to her," Heather mocked. "Top percentile. Such big words for someone so small." My mother threw the brochure on the floor. "Clean up this mess and stop wasting time on ridiculous fantasies. People like us do not go to places like that." But I had not spent years enduring their abuse to give up now. That night, after they had all gone to bed, I carefully gathered every brochure, every application note, and created a new hiding place in a loose vent cover in my closet. Then I spent hours researching scholarship essays on the ancient desktop computer in the family room. The next month passed in tense silence. I avoided home as much as possible, volunteering for extra shifts at the library and studying there until closing time. I completed college applications using the library computers, had recommendation letters sent to my work address, and applied for every scholarship I could find. Then the letter came. A thick envelope from Columbia University addressed to me, caught by chance before anyone else could see it. I opened it with trembling hands in the privacy of the library's back room. Accepted. Full academic scholarship. Joy and terror flooded through me in equal measure. This was my ticket out. But I still had months before graduation, months of living with people who would see my success as the ultimate betrayal. I decided to keep the acceptance a secret as long as possible, but secrets have a way of revealing themselves at the worst moments. One evening in April, less than 2 months before graduation, I arrived home to find my family waiting at the kitchen table. The Columbia acceptance letter lay open in the center. "Care to explain this?" my mother asked, her voice dangerously quiet. My mail had been opened again. My privacy violated again. But in that moment, seeing my future literally on the table, a strange calm settled over me. "I've been accepted to Columbia University with a full scholarship," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I start in August." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for hours, though it was probably only seconds. "So you've been planning to abandon your family?" my mother finally said. "I'm planning to get an education," I corrected. "In New York." My father spat the words like a curse. "Thousands of miles away. After all we've done for you." I almost laughed at that. All they had done for me. The bare minimum of keeping me fed and housed while treating me like an unwelcome intruder. "This scholarship is an amazing opportunity," I tried to explain. "It covers everything. Tuition, housing, books." "Listen to you," Heather cut in. "So full of yourself. You think you're going to go to some fancy school and become someone important. You'll always be trash, no matter what piece of paper they give you." I looked at their faces, searching for any sign of pride or happiness for me. There was none, only anger, resentment, and in my mother's eyes, something that looked almost like fear. "I'm going," I said firmly. "I've earned this." "We'll see about that," my father threatened vaguely, too drunk to formulate a specific consequence. As I left the kitchen, I heard my mother comforting Heather, who had started to cry dramatically. "It's okay, sweetheart. She won't go through with it." You know how she is, all talk and showing off. But I was done being underestimated. I was going no matter what obstacles they put in my way. Little did I know just how dangerous those obstacles would become. May 17th. The date is burned into my memory as permanently as the scar on my arm. It was 3 weeks before graduation, and I had an interview for a prestigious summer internship that would start shortly after my arrival in New York. The interview was scheduled for 9 o'clock that morning, giving me plenty of time to prepare. I woke at 5:30, earlier than anyone else in the house. The tension since my college revelation had been unbearable. My parents alternated between ignoring me completely and making snide comments about my delusions of grandeur. Heather had taken to accidentally bumping into me in hallways, knocking things from my hands, and once pouring soda into my backpack. That morning I had laid out my only nice outfit the night before. A navy blue skirt, white blouse and matching blazer I had purchased from a thrift store and carefully tailored to fit. The clothes weren't new or expensive, but they were professional and clean. I showered quickly and went downstairs to iron my outfit. The house was silent, everyone still asleep. I set up the ironing board in the laundry room, plugged in the iron and waited for it to heat. As I smoothed out the wrinkles in my blazer, I allowed myself to imagine the interview going well, pictured myself walking through Columbia's campus in the fall, living in a dorm with people who might actually become friends. So absorbed was I in these pleasant thoughts that I didn't hear Heather approaching until she spoke. Playing dress up? Her voice startled me. I turned to see my sister leaning against the door frame, still in her pajamas but fully awake. Her eyes had that calculating look I had learned to fear. I have an interview, I said simply, turning back to my task. For what? McDonald's? She snickered. I didn't respond. Engagement only encouraged her. Oh wait. Is this for that internship thing? The one you mentioned to Mom. I remained silent, though tension crept up my spine. I hadn't mentioned the internship to anyone in the family. Heather must have been reading my emails again. Silent treatment. Real mature, she said, stepping into the small laundry room. Let me see what trash wears to an interview. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my freshly ironed blazer from the hanger and held it up. Give that back, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I need to leave soon. This is actually not terrible, she said, examining the blazer. Then her expression changed, a malicious smile spreading across her face. But it's missing something. With deliberate slowness, she reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out a tube of red lipstick. Before I could react, she uncapped it and dragged it across the front of my blazer, leaving a bright streak across the navy fabric. There. Much more colorful, she laughed. What is wrong with you? I lunged for the blazer, but she danced away, continuing to mark the fabric with lipstick. Just improving your wardrobe, she taunted. Though nothing could improve you. I grabbed for the blazer again and caught the sleeve. We struggled briefly before she released it with a shove that sent me stumbling backward. I looked down at my ruined blazer, lipstick smeared across the front and sleeve. You're insane, I said, my voice shaking. Do you know how long I saved for this outfit? Cry me a river, she rolled her eyes. It's still trash, just like you. Something snapped inside me. Years of taking her abuse, years of turning the other cheek, years of swallowing my rage came pouring out. I threw the ruined blazer aside and shoved her hard, sending her stumbling into the washing machine. You spoiled, jealous brat, I hissed. You can't stand that I'm getting out of here, that I'm going to have a life while you're stuck being nothing. Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. Heather wasn't used to me fighting back. She launched herself at me, grabbing my hair and yanking hard. I yelped in pain but managed to push her away again. We grappled awkwardly in the confined space, knocking into the ironing board. I was so focused on defending myself that I didn't immediately register what happened next. Heather broke away from me, breathing hard, her eyes darting around until they landed on the iron, still plugged in and hot on the board. A terrible smile spread across her face as she reached for it. What are you doing? I asked, suddenly afraid. Teaching you a lesson about your place in this family, she replied, unplugging the iron but gripping it by the handle. I backed away, but the laundry room was small and the door was behind her. There was nowhere to go. Put that down, I said, trying to sound authoritative despite my fear. Make me, she taunted, advancing slowly. I backed into the wall, eyes fixed on the iron. She lunged suddenly, and I raised my arm instinctively to protect my face. The searing pain was immediate and overwhelming as the hot metal pressed against my forearm. The smell of burning flesh filled the small room as I screamed in agony. Heather held the iron against my skin for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds before dropping it to the floor. I collapsed, clutching my burned arm, waves of pain radiating through my body. What is going on down here? My mother's voice came from the hallway, followed by her appearance in the doorway. My father loomed behind her, unshaven and bleary-eyed. She attacked me, Heather said immediately, summoning tears with practiced ease. I was just defending myself. I could barely speak through the pain, holding my injured arm where an angry red burn in the shape of the iron's plate was already beginning to blister. She burned me, I finally gasped. She used the iron on me. My mother surveyed the scene. The knocked-over ironing board, the iron on the floor, my ruined clothes, and my obviously burned arm. For a moment I thought I saw concern in her eyes. Maybe this time the injury was too severe to ignore. Maybe this time she would act like a mother. That hope died with her next words. "That's what trash gets for existing," she said coldly. I looked up at her in disbelief, tears streaming down my face from the pain. My father peered over her shoulder, taking in the scene with detached interest. "If I were her, I would have burned your face too," he said with a small, cruel smile. They both turned and left without another word, leaving me still huddled on the floor. I heard my mother in the hallway comforting Heather, asking if she was okay after the altercation. I sat there for several minutes, the pain in my arm almost secondary to the pain in my heart. This was the moment I fully understood that they didn't just dislike me or find me disappointing. They actively wished me harm. My own family had just witnessed a serious injury and walked away laughing. Eventually, I pulled myself up. The interview was in less than 2 hours, and I refused to let them win by making me miss it. In the bathroom, I ran cold water over the burn, biting my lip to keep from crying out at the contact. The burn was bad, 2nd degree at least, with blisters already forming across my forearm in the distinct shape of an iron. With shaking hands, I found the first aid kit under the sink and did my best to apply antibiotic ointment and wrap the burn in gauze. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain up my arm. I knew I needed medical attention, but without a car or my parents' help, the emergency room wasn't an option. My interview outfit was ruined. The blazer was covered in lipstick, and drops of blood from where I had accidentally scraped my arm in the fall had stained the white blouse. I returned to my room and dug through my closet, finding a long-sleeved button-up shirt that would cover the bandage. It wasn't as professional as my planned outfit, but it would have to do. As I carefully dressed, avoiding jarring my injured arm, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last time they hurt me. One way or another, I was getting out of this house and I was never coming back. With no other options for clothing and my arm throbbing painfully beneath the inadequate bandage, I knew I needed help. I slipped out the front door while my family continued their breakfast, talking and laughing as if nothing had happened, as if one of them hadn't just committed assault. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, was watering her garden when I emerged. She was a retired teacher in her 70s who had always been kind to me, offering cookies when I was younger and books as I grew older. She took one look at my face and put down her watering can. "Elaine, what happened, dear?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. I hesitated, years of keeping family secrets making me reluctant to speak. But my arm hurt terribly, and I had an interview I could not miss. "I had an accident with the iron," I said, the lie coming automatically. "And I ruined my interview clothes. I have an important meeting in an hour and a half, and I don't know what to do." Mrs. Peterson gave me a look that suggested she didn't believe the accident part of my story, but she didn't press. "Come inside," she said gently. "Let me look at that arm first. Then we'll find you something to wear." In her neat living room, she carefully unwrapped my amateur bandaging and gasped at the angry red burn beneath. "Elaine, this needs medical attention," she said firmly. "This is a serious burn." "After the interview," I insisted. "I cannot miss this opportunity." She looked like she wanted to argue but instead went to her bathroom and returned with a proper first aid kit. With gentle hands she cleaned the burn again, applied professional-grade burn cream, and wrapped it with clean bandages. My late husband was a firefighter, she explained as she worked. I learned a thing or two about treating burns, but this should be seen by a doctor, Elaine. I promise I'll go after the interview, I said, knowing it was probably a lie. Without insurance or parental support, I had no way to pay for treatment. Once my arm was properly bandaged, Mrs. Peterson disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a navy blue dress with 3/4 sleeves. It was my daughter's, she explained. She left some clothes here last time she visited. It might be a bit loose, but it's professional looking. The dress was simple but elegant, and the sleeves were long enough to cover most of my bandage. Mrs. Peterson found me a cardigan to go over it, completely concealing the injury. Thank you, I said, emotion making my voice thick.